Great. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out on such a sort of cold and wet evening to hear what's new and exciting about chickens. I think I think you will all find that in fact chickens and eggs are really the center of the universe. The more you look at it, the more you realize that they tell a really important kind of story. I'm Peter Leopold, one of the curators here at the National Museum of American History, and I'm going to be moderating conversation this evening. But before we get started, I'd like to do some just quick housekeeping kinds of notes. First of all, to remind you all that this is part of an ongoing series, that once a month you can come down and hear an exciting talk that really focuses on food and drink, really gives you some insight in how American life works. This is part of our food history project here at the museum. And we really are trying to explore the history of the nation and its people through topics in food. If you'd like to continue the conversation afterwards, you can use a Twitter feed of hashtag History After Hours, and that's the series. Next month, I think it's on sushi, right, Susan? So there's an interesting one on sushi coming up. We'll have about 10 minutes of Q&A following our conversation. And if you have questions, we're being way hip in how to do this. You're supposed to use the Twitter handle of @AmHistoryMuseum. And our moderator, did I get that right?
No, you have to do the hashtag.
Oh, I'm sorry, hashtag.
It's behind you.
Right here.
Yeah, read the wall and don't listen to me. If you have a question and that you want us to answer, then use the Twitter hashtag there. Susan Evans will be collecting pieces, and then she will give us a chance in the end to answer some of those questions that you might have. At the end of the conversation, of course, the evening goes on. There'll be a chance to extend the conversation to talk to us about things. Of course, there's music and drink, great chicken food, some live chickens outside, which we had a lot of discussion as to whether it's actually legal in the National Museum to have animals or not, but we've got some kind of dispensation to it. And
we won't tell anybody.
And then we'll also have some objects out of the collection so that you can actually interact with some of our objects. And finally, the food exhibition will be open. So there's really, it's going to be a full evening of different activities. I'd like to now introduce our panelists. Mary Lou Brown on my left owns and operates with her husband a farm on Maryland Eastern Shore. They characterize it as a small operation, but they're raising 1 million broilers annually. This is a 6-house or 6-barn
Six-house,
operation.
6-barn, whichever way.
Right, and a pretty big operation. A million broilers is I got one daughter, and keeping track of her is difficult. So you've got 6 million to look out for. So I can imagine that must keep you up at nights.
It does sometimes.
Mary Lou grew up on a dairy farm, so she's been in agriculture all her life. She worked in Queen Anne County as the Extension Service, and really has a very rich background in agriculture. Our other panelist is Dr. Scott Barrow. He was also raised in a dairy, so we've got two people with dairy history. So if you have milk questions, they can handle them. He grew up in Massachusetts and really has been involved in every aspect of agriculture, from teaching it to practicing it. Currently, he's the executive director of the Jorgensen Family Foundation in Buckeystown, Maryland. And really, they're devoted to local grass-fed, grass-finished beef, But he has his own farm, the Fieldstone Farm, where we grows a variety of different animals, including laying hens. And so we've got broilers, which would be chickens to eat, and laying hens, so we've got eggs. So it's really the whole chicken experience here tonight. Before we launch into talking a bit about this, I want to hold the stage for just a moment and take a really brief opportunity to really mention why this is so important, that food is clearly becoming critical to people. Studies show that there's a lot of angst about food, where it comes from, how it's prepared, and farmers have listened to this and are really making an effort to go out to the public and speak and share their experience and let you all understand that that it's not some anonymous company that's making food for you, but actual real people doing real work. And so the museum is excited about this, to be able to host this. We're also excited to be able to historicize it so that you can see that things change over time. And for us, that's really a key point, that chicken and eggs have really not have not always been the story that we think of today. That as we were preparing for this, my thought was I would start talking off a little bit about that famous Hoover speech, a chicken in every pot. But it turns out that Hoover actually never even said that. And one of the reasons that he didn't say it is that in 1929, chickens were really expensive and people didn't hardly eat them. That mostly people had chickens for laying eggs. And that Hoover's speech, it was really an advertisement. So the chicken in every pot exists. It just was not his personal speech. And his advertisement was really talking about prosperity. So what we're able to do is we're going to be able to answer that age-old question that people have been talking about for years, of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Because historically, when it comes to production, we actually know the answer, that the egg came first. That chickens were largely laying chickens, and that people had them in order to lay eggs, to have eggs. And the eggs were what they were really after. When the hens got old, they were eventually consumed, but they were old hens, and they're certainly not like what you would taste. They were not delicate meat, much gamier, and really a different kind of experience. Things started to shift, and the raising of chickens for actual production really took off. And this all happens sort of in the 30s and the 40s. By the 1940s, the big production of chicken meat has really begun, and there's really a revolution going on. And for us, as a museum, this is really important, that as we look at history, one of the things that we find is true in all aspects of history, be it agricultural production or other areas, that this transformation, this ongoing change is really important. That one of the economists that we all here are interested in is Joseph Schumpeter, talks about creative destruction. Or the author Joyce Appleby talks about relentless capitalism. Or my favorite saying is that the only tradition in America is the tradition of no traditions. That as a nation, we seem to be always willing to change. And our diets change, and the food that makes up those diets change along with them. And what we will talk a bit about tonight is how those changes have come to pass. So I'd like to kick this off and ask Mary Lou and Scott to just tell us a little bit. sort of a day in the life, what it's like to be in your business and what you actually do, because so few people here have ever had your experience. So if you give them a snapshot of your experience.
Well, personally for me, with 6 chicken houses to take care of on a daily basis, I'm connected to them 100% of the time. Right now, I can get a call from the farm that tells me, hey, there's a problem. And then I can get somebody to address that. So I never leave those chickens unattended. They are given total care of, they're protected from the animals around them. They have a total environmentally controlled area. We give them enough light, and they get feed and water 100% of the time around the clock. When I walk into that chicken house, I want to be comfortable when I walk in. If I'm not comfortable, they're not comfortable. So I'm trying to keep their environment decent for them to be raised in. 2 weeks ago, we placed again with broilers. They came in, all 6 houses together for biosecurity reasons, because there's diseases out there. So if you have an older bird versus a younger bird on the farm, that could be a problem. So we have to control that. But I go in, we have a controller, and I look and I say, all right, temperature's good across the entire chicken house. There's 7 sensors in the house, and I can tell where they are. If I have a cold spot in the house, when I walk from one end to the other, which I walk every single house every day from one end to the other, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, depending on what, like when I walk the first time, if I see a problem, I'll go back and fix it. So I'm checking. I'm making sure their environment is right. We have nipples, I'm raising the water lines. It's a large operation, but yet technology has made it possible for me to do this job, and I have one person working with me. And my kids, when they're home right during school year, their job is the education, get their education. But when this week my son is on spring break, poor child, he's got to go and work at the farm because he doesn't have a choice. But it's our way of teaching him how to work. And he's beside me when we do that. I'm looking to see if there's feed in the pans. If there's no feed in a feed line, we have 3 feed lines going across each house from end to end. If there's no feed in a line, I've got to fix that problem.
If I can just jump in with one question before we go over to Scott. One of the things that I assume biosecurity is a big issue for you. What is it that you wear when you go into the house? In the house, I should say, one of these houses, 35,000, 39,000 birds. You could park an airplane inside of them.
Not quite. I have houses of different sizes, but 3 of the houses are 60 by 500, 2 are 50 by 500, and then one is a house from the 80s, and it's only 400 by 42 feet wide. So, they're different sizes. The biosecurity, what I wear into that house, I just wear normal clothes, but that's the only place I wear those clothes. I have shoes that are specifically for that house. I don't wear those shoes off the farm if I run to the hardware store. I switch them out. We're not to the point where I wear a full covering. Now, when we have a service person come in, the company we grow for, who takes care of marketing the birds for us, because we can't market the bird. I don't have time to market the bird and grow those birds properly and keep them in a good environment. They do the marketing for us, and that is a very, very good thing, because as Scott, he has a smaller operation than we do. That's a major ordeal for him to have to market the birds. Once he's established, it's easier. But they give me that. So when they come in, because they're going from farm to farm, they put on a full white coveralls type thing and walk through the houses. But biosecurity is a big deal. So, and being out of dairy for about 30 years now, it blows me away when I go to a dairy farm and they tell me to put plastic boots on. I'm like, really? Because I always thought cows were pretty tough, but oh well.
That's great.
So that's the way it is today.
Well, thank you very much. Scott, can you give us a little peek into what your experience is like every day?
Sure, absolutely, Peter. We have a completely different type of operation. We're integrated and diversified across several species, cattle, sheep, and laying hens. And we direct market everything that we raise directly to the consumer. So I interact with the consumer on a weekly basis through our retail market on our farm. And if you want to meet the chickens that produce the eggs you're buying, then you can do that. If you want to meet mom and dad that produce the steak you're going to buy, we can do that. So we have a completely different situation in that we have a much deeper and more direct connection with the consumer. And so as a result, the consumer demand and desires has driven the size and the shape and the makeup of our operation. And we are 100% grass-based on the cattle and sheep side, and we would call ourselves all natural, which is a nebulous kind of word. You get to define that how you want to define it. And on the eggs, so we don't have cages. We have free-range housing for the laying hens, and we collect the eggs daily or several times a day, and they get direct marketed. So the day in the life for our family could be working with the cattle for the majority of the day, filling in with the chickens are pretty low maintenance. You feed them and collect the eggs and make sure they have clean water and that they're safe, or working with the sheep. So it's an exciting day because you never really know what's coming down the pike, and you've got several species to work with.
Now, when you have chickens in that kind of environment of a big house and not confined at all, does that put a bigger burden on you as a farmer to manage them?
It takes, especially with laying hens, it does take more management because when you have chickens that are loose housed, they don't always lay their eggs in the nests, and so if they lay them on the ground, that can be an issue. Sometimes a chicken will break open an egg and get what's called egg taste, and they'll begin to start to eat eggs, which obviously cuts into the profit if the chickens are eating the eggs. And there's issues like that you have to deal with. Also, weather issues when it's very, very cold. Sometimes you can get frozen eggs. We don't let them free range out. Everybody has, or lots of folks have this picture of free range chickens out in the pasture. Well, the foxes have that same picture. And they do a much better job of harvesting those chickens than we can protecting those chickens in that environment. So, we have to be good stewards of those animals. And for us, that's to give them loose housing, plenty of room, feed and water, and good care. But beyond that, they are housed.
Yeah, I don't think I ever really understood the whole reason for the fences in chicken culture until my brother started raising chickens and quickly realized that it's not about keeping the chickens in, it's about keeping the other animals out.
Absolutely.
That they're really sitting prey to a lot of wild animals.
I want to clarify something. In these chicken houses that I just described, which are as big as football fields, something like that, those chickens they're free. They're free to run. Right. They're not in cages or anything like that. They have good litter and they're free to run. So I do want to clarify that.
Yeah, it's a similar kind of housing that they're loose.
It's just bigger.
Larger, yes.
Yeah.
It's all just larger.
If you ever have a chance to go to a chicken house, you really ought to do it. It is I went down on a visit, and it was really a magical kind of experience. Quite frankly, I stood outside and feared what was going to be inside, that it was going to be kind of smelly. And I was shocked. There's huge airflow, so it wasn't really bad at all. But what's wonderful about it, the magical experience, is the chickens themselves. That you go into a house, in case of a big house like this, with over 30,000, as you walk in, the chickens will part. And it's like you're in a movie. Every movie of Africa opens with the scene with the birds flying. And the chickens sort of part, and you walk through them, and then they close in behind you. And it's just, I stuck around for 20 minutes because I was having so much fun dancing with the chickens.
He wants us to call him Moses.
Yeah, really.
So, Mary, you were talking a little bit about your old house from the 80s being different. What kinds of changes have you seen in the industry? Is this pretty much static, or is innovation going on in technique.
Not static at all. In fact, the house, we started in '01, and we ended up buying 2 old houses and building 2 houses at that point in time. And when we did that, those 2 old houses, we completely renovated to where there's technology in there that was not there before. We have big fans on one end of the house, and then we have a tunnel pad on the other end where the curtain drops down on the inside, and you can pull the air from one end to the other. It's like during the summer, that's the place to be, because when tunnel is running, you got 13, 14, 48-inch fans. I mean, they're huge. Fans running, all of them running. When that house goes into tunnel, that curtain drops and all those fans come on, it's a nice breeze blowing across the house. So it's comfortable in there. I love going in the chicken house during the summer because it is the most comfortable time. We ventilate them 100% of the time, but it's, when you need to cool the chickens, and we have a temperature we start at and we go down to. So, but the technology, the controller does that for me. It's a computer. Each house has a computer. You have a temperature curve in there, and you set it according to what the company wants us, the way they want us to bring it down, and that's the way we control it. And when we keep our alarms as close as 7 degrees off, high or low, and if we're 7 degrees out, I'm going to get a call telling me that there's a problem in the chicken house. And it'll tell me which chicken house there's a problem in. And certain controllers, I get a call and it tells me where the problem is, whether it's a high temperature, low temperature, static pressure problem. It tells me what's going on and what I have to do to fix it. It tells me if a auger is running too long. So it tells me if there's a water flow problem. If I have a high water flow problem going on, I'm getting over there pretty fast, because that means I got a problem with a pipe somewhere I don't want. So it's this technology, it's always changing. Right now, University of Delaware is working on the development, looking at lights. We're looking at lighting. What is the best lighting for a chicken? We don't even know what the best lighting is for human beings. But in the last 5 years, not these. In the last 5 years, that has become very important. What light, what level? I mean, there's so many things that go into it. My nephew's getting ready to build chicken houses, and he'll have things in there I don't have. I just put laser control pans in my chicken house. You couldn't have told me that 10 years ago. I would have done that.
I hear Xbox is coming next year to chicken houses. Yeah.
Well, somebody told me I'm supposed to put speakers in there. Right. I don't know.
So, Scott, you're really dedicated to local production, really following a different kind of model. Clearly, with a bigger commercial operation, there's some of that technology is offset in the scale of things. Do you find that technological changes are important in the way that you produce, or are you really going along a more traditional kind of line?
Well, we have a mix of both, Peter. Probably the most significant technology that we take advantage of would be in breeding and genetics in our animals, and in breeding and genetics in the crops that we grow, basically pasture and hay, so that we can produce the highest level of nutrition that we can produce for our animals, maximize then the use of our acreage. We also, sustainability of our operation is extremely high priority for us. We have a mile of frontage on the Monocacy River, and our farm is just south of Frederick. The Monocacy is a major tributary into the Chesapeake Bay, and so it's important to us. The stewardship of the environment, the land, is extremely important to us. So we're working constantly to make sure we're not impacting in a negative fashion any of the surrounding ecosystem. As part of doing that is using the best forages, the most rapidly growing forages, forages that fix nitrogen, forages that grab phosphorus out of the ground and fix it so the animals can eat it. And we also use some technology in our grazing system so that we can maximize the animal harvest of our pastures, if you will, recycle the manure so we're not storing manure. And so those are some management things that are more technical than they used to be, but also some farming things, breeding and genetics that we focus on very strongly.
Now, you made sort of an interesting comment a little earlier about all natural, that it's sort of a vague term. So it'd be interesting in hearing from both of you, really talking about how consumers really are influencing your work. That I think that if you look at what was happening 50 years ago, producers produced and consumers had to take whatever producers produced. But today, the market is a lot different, and consumers are really driving a lot of the change. And what is it that you're doing to respond to everybody's interests?
Well, and as I said earlier, we're very fortunate to have a weekly contact with consumers, and I listen to what they want. And certainly the demand for a connection to your food, how and where your food is being produced, is extremely high. We've done surveys with our customers, asked them in-depth questions about why they buy, what they buy, where they buy, what they buy. And the number one driver, in my opinion, is local, that they have a connection, that they know where their food comes from. As the food supply gets more globalized, I think consumers become hesitant. The other piece, Peter, that I would mention is, and I said this with the natural, that it's somewhat of a nebulous label because really it only means minimally processed. There's this tension between organic and natural, and it's gotten to the point where consumers even doubt what organic means anymore. The picture in your mind of the bucolic Vermont dairy farm with 50 cows is producing the milk, that's not the picture of organic. It's the 500,000 cows in Horizon's Dairy in California that's getting labeled organic. I don't think that that's where the consumers anticipated this all going. So there's been a watering down of what organic means, even though it's defined tightly by USDA, and that's been overshadowed by this demand for a locally produced product, because the consumer can come, they can meet me, they can meet my family, they can walk out and see the cows or the chickens, they know where their food's coming from. And so we just simply explain how we do it. And if that fits your need as a consumer,
Yep.
our production practices, then God bless you, you're going to buy our product. If you need an organic label, we can't offer you that. We don't have organic approval on our farm. So, Peter, it's very much responding to the needs and desires of the consumer and providing a product that they know is safe, that's nutritious, that's reasonably priced, safe to feed to their families.
Now, Mary Lou, I'd like to ask you the same question, but you're growing for Purdue, and they're famous for, or at least I think they're famous for really trying to brand their chicken with color and taste. So how much does that continue today? Are your chickens different than other branded chickens?
I don't believe they're really different than any other branded chickens.
Holy smokes! I hope nobody's recording this.
But
they're tastier, right?
Frank Perdue, back in the 70s, he came up with yellow sunflower seeds to make the yellow skin coloring, and that's how he sold his product. It was a marketing thing, and that's how he built the company. But they have responded to what the consumer is saying, and if we have a sick flock of chickens, it's going to take lots of pulling to get any kind of treatment. I mean, we get treatment. It's definitely not antibiotic. A vet can describe that, but that doesn't happen. It's taken out of the feed. There is nothing in there. So my chickens could get sick faster if I'm not careful. I have to control the environment in order to keep that from happening, and that's what my goal is to keep it from going high and low. And my job is to provide a product that I feel is safe. If I feel it's safe, then it's safe for you to eat, because I know what I'm growing on my farm is good for you. I'm just growing it in a larger scale because I forget the number, but we have a lot more people each year on this planet, and we are going to have to feed them one way or the other. And a small backyard operation, I mean, you can only feed so many people a week, Scott.
Absolutely, no question.
So in our 1 million chickens that we grow a year, I can feed all of Dorchester County for 1 year. all they need for their chicken. So, I mean, that's what you're looking at. And we have people, and we use every aspect of the chicken to do that. I mean, every aspect, when it goes to the plant, every aspect. The paws, every aspect of is it used one way or the other. They do not waste anything. So it's an we go there, and it's driven by the consumer in some aspects. The pulling out, the way we treat and take care of the chickens, that's all driven by the consumer. So Jim Purdue has responded to that and is now doing some other things in that area too.
So I got to ask a sort of a basic question that I think that almost everybody loves animals. I grew up with a dog, and lots of people have cats and things like that. But, I didn't grow up on a farm. We just had, my feelings about animals were as pets. As farmers, how do you feel about your animals? It seems like sort of a different kind of situation, and I think I'm curious about that, and I suspect other people are too. Do you give them names? Do you treat them like pets?
I kiss everyone goodnight every night. No, they're just animals in the chicken house, but I do feel for them because I want them to be comfortable. I want them to be well cared for. I'll tell you what, if we lose electrical power, I have none at my house because I don't have a generator. But the farm has a generator. I might move in with the chickens because we don't have a generator at home. We have it on the farm in case there's a power outage because we can't be without power at all. We have to have power 100% of the time. But the chickens, I'm compassionate towards my chickens. If I walk in and they're noisy, all right, I'm saying it's too hot or too cold in here, or they're clumping. Okay, it's too cold, too drafty. I got to do a little bit of change in the ventilation. I'm looking at what's going on. I make the changes that are necessary to make those birds comfortable because I want them to be comfortable. If they're not eating and drinking like they should.
Peter, I think my answer to that question would be, number one, we're raising food animals. They're all going to end up as food. The stewardship of those animals is my responsibility. So it's incumbent upon me from a profitability standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint, to provide them with the best feed, the best environment, the best handling, the best animal care. We vaccinate everything just like you vaccinate your children. And a healthy animal is an animal that's going to thrive and grow and produce a safe and healthy product for the consumer. So it's in my best interest to manage them like that. They have as comfortable a life as they can have as a food animal, but at the end of the day, they're food animals. Can I just tell the steak story real quick?
You bet.
I've done worked with Susan on a program here at the museum called Ask the Farmer, where I come in electronically and talk about farming to whoever happens to be in the museum. And this one particular day, there was a group of school children from Baltimore City. I think that's right, isn't it, Susan? And so they have a chance to interact with me and ask questions. This one little boy raised his hand, and he wanted to know how we got the steaks out of the cows without killing them. And, I said, I'm sorry, son, but we have to kill them to get the steaks. And we were discussing earlier how far folks are removed from the farm today that they think everything comes from the grocery store and they don't think beyond that how it gets there. I would love to have you visit our farm. You would be very impressed at the level of management that goes into the production of the food that you eat every day.
I feel the same way. I mean, there's a lot of management that goes into it.
Now, back in say, 1900, 1910, chickens were largely barnyard animals, often feeding them table scraps, most likely eggs for the family, maybe a little bit of money, extra money for the family, but not really the thrust of the business. So food was not really the big issue. What are you all feeding? In Scott, your case, laying hen, and Mary Lou, your case, the broilers. Are they getting the same food? What's the food like?
It's corn, soybeans, depending on, Purdue has their own feed mills. They buy the corn, they buy the soybeans from the farmers on the shore, and they also bring it in from out west. That's our rail system, which is very important to us because we can't produce all the feed that we need for our animals, but that's what it is. The farmer had to take test of their field, and then they had to figure out how much they needed for that crop that they were growing. Today, they have satellites on the tractor so that when they take our chicken litter out in the field, it's been tested, the field's been tested, they know what crop's in there, they're spreading that litter according to exactly what that field needs. Nothing more, nothing less, because it costs money. It's money to them, it's money to us, we sell it to a local farmer to use. So, and we need that because every flock we're taking crust out and reconditioning the litter, and then every 2 years we clean out totally and put all new litter in. And when we do that crust out, we're paying somebody to come in and do that. And so when we put it in the manure shed, and then we move it off, and the farmer puts it on the field according to the way they need it, and they store it according to those regulations. And the hardest part for any agriculture person is learning these new rules and meeting those new rules. We have come a long ways in a very short period of time. It seems like lightning speed. So every time there's a new law that comes down concerning that, it's difficult sometimes because it's very, very expensive to us. We work in tenths of a penny. That's how we work. We don't work in pennies. We don't work in nickels. We work in tenths of the pennies when we're growing our product.
Great. So I'm sure everyone is itching to meet some chickens. So we did have one great wrap-up question here. So we've talked a lot about the changes of chicken in history. What do you think the chicken will look like in 20 more years?
I should have asked that question.
That's a good question. Great audience question.
Yeah, that is good.
I have no idea because it looks so different from what it looked 20, 30 years ago. So to answer that question, I can't because technology is going so fast.
I wouldn't even venture a guess. I'm sorry.
I'm going to venture a guess. Or at least I want to use it as a time to point something out, at least about broilers. I know more about broilers than about laying hens. But in fact, the genetics that we've heard a lot about today are really important. And chickens are really grown for very specific weight. That one of the things about agriculture versus manufacturing is that in manufacturing, everything can be interchangeable because you can make it to size. And in agriculture, it is a biological process, whether it's a ear of corn that's growing or a chicken in a house. And as such, there's these little differences between things, and it just drives people crazy because those differences makes everything down the stream very difficult. It makes it, in terms of processing and slaughtering the animals and further processing is difficult. It's very difficult in terms of portion control. So the fast food industry has a very specific size chicken that it wants.
Yep.
And you really have very small tolerances in terms of that. So probably what we're going to see is more chickens that look like each other.
They
in
look a
order
lot like
to-
each other now.
That they
Yeah.
become more interchangeable.
Our chickens that we have are 49-day, 50-day birds. They're grown to about 6 3/4 pounds or almost 7 pounds. If they're heavier than that or too light, the processing plant isn't happy because they're set for that. So they're watching how we're growing them and how well we're growing them, and then they take them out according to that. So, yeah, they're growing to what the market wants, what Walmart wants, what McDonald's wants. They want a certain size.
Great. Well, thank you all for listening to us. I hope that you take some time to chat with Mary Lou and Scott a bit more about their experiences. I had a few minutes to be able to talk to them before we got on the stage. They've all got great stories, and I suspect that you have questions that you'd like to hear answered. There's great food and drink outside, bluegrass band by and by. We've got some interesting books that you can that are available for purchase, and some fabulous artifacts that we would prefer that you not touch, but that you look at. So thank you all for coming.